New week, same old boring morning meeting. Welcome everybody to the morning meeting. No, it's exciting. Thank you for joining. Just a little over 2 weeks to go. Lots to get through. Dan, Sean, and I will walk you through the day, kick it around a little bit, and then, as always, take your questions. If you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your electronic hand if you'd like to be in the conversation. As always, we love new people. If you've never spoken before, today's your lucky day and our lucky day. Please raise your hand. As always, love undecided voters from battleground states, but love everybody. So thank you. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome in. Thank you for watching. Please, if you participate in the chat, remember we're all about peace, love, and understanding, learning from each other, not attacking. I'm putting a big premium the rest of the way on everybody preparing for your favorite candidate to lose, because I don't think there's enough of that going on. We'll talk about that at 6 o'clock. Today, rather than starting with the day book, we'll start with two new polls because everybody's poll crazy. And there was a bizarre lull in polling over the weekend. No significant major polls released on the Sunday shows or major newspapers. But today it happened. 102, please. USA Today, inexplicably, David Plouffe and I agree, wasting their money on a national poll. Here it is, tied. You can say Harris is ahead, but tied in amongst likely voters. A change. That poll previously had Harris up, I think, by 5. So the trend, as has been the case, not in all polling, but in a lot of polling, and certainly national polling, has shifted Trump's way. All right. Second poll that dropped, battleground state poll, 103. The Washington Post, a few hours ago, or about an hour ago, I guess 2 hours ago, put out some battleground state polls that are tied also. They're all within the margin of error. If you want to go and parse them one by one, and there you see them all, tied in the aggregate 49-48. If you want to parse them, you'd say, if you thought these numbers were like meaningfully meaningful, you'd say they're better for Harris because she's up in Georgia, she's up in Michigan, she's up in Pennsylvania, she's up in Wisconsin. Okay. Now, not necessarily enough to win, but whatever. Tied. They're tied. That's all you can take from that. Okay. Now, as to what they're doing today, Harris is in the 3 blue wall states doing events with um, Liz Cheney and what's the name of that woman who does focus groups? Blanking on her name. Charlie Sykes and the former Republican who does focus groups.
Sarah Long.
Sarah Long. Yeah. So she's doing events with them, and they're basically targeting the suburban areas, suburban women. 1140 in Malvern, Pennsylvania, then 410 in Birmingham, Michigan. These are like classic suburbs, and then 7 o'clock in Brookfield, Wisconsin. All in theory the same format involving conversations with Liz Cheney, moderated by those two people. If you want to say Elon Musk is the Charlie Sykes of the Republican Party, you can, whatever. That's what she's doing. And again, as you can see from today's reporting, she's targeting suburban women because they believe that that's a big part of where they need to go. Her week ahead schedule also is out. It's primarily the blue wall states, although she's going to Georgia on Thursday. Donald Trump, 3 events in North Carolina. He's in Asheville this morning inspecting storm damage, in theory at around noon, talking to the media. And then 2 events in Greenville. He's doing a rally at 3 p.m. and then what's called an 11th hour faith leaders meeting featuring Donald Trump, Eric Trump, and Ben Carson in Concord, North Carolina at 6:30 p.m. Tim Walsh, Chicago fundraiser. He's on.
I believe that's Concord. Yeah. They're very specific there.
Concord, not Concord. Concord.
New Hampshire, you were speaking of.
Yeah. You're a good call. Thank you for that. Tim Walsh, Chicago fundraiser, then in New York doing The View and The Daily Show. Not sure what J.D. Vance is doing. Doug Emhoff in Pennsylvania. Gwen Waltz also in Pennsylvania. All right. Couple things I want to tee up. We're going to talk about the 2 candidates and how they're doing. But first, I want to talk about the early vote. Okay. Continues to be a lot of debate about who's doing better in the early vote. What do the numbers mean? And that could be absentee ballots being returned. It could be in-person voting. I've been talking to analysts on both sides, partisan ones, but also nonpartisan ones. And here's my sort of teeing up where we are. I asked people, because it's early, right? There's no way to draw some sort of conclusive conclusion here. But based on what we've seen so far, I asked them, what's good for Republicans? What's good for Democrats? So first, let's start with the Republicans, okay? Number 105. What is the Republican take on the early vote? Absentee ballot activity has declined dramatically in all the states that we care about where there is the early vote. And you could say conclusively that the less early vote, almost certainly the worse for Democrats. The margins in all the absentee ballot channels relative to 2020 are lower. Again, the delta is going to be what matters. We know it's going to be lower. How much lower will be the question, but it is lower. And then in Georgia and North Carolina, Republicans are significantly outperforming what they did in in-person voting compared to 4 years ago. All those good for Republicans. And the data from North Carolina this morning continues to show what seems to be the case, which is black early vote is down in Georgia, North Carolina, and in Pennsylvania, parts of Pennsylvania. What's the Democratic view? Democratic view of the early vote. 106, please. Republicans in Pennsylvania are not returning absentee ballots at the same rate as Democrats. So Pennsylvania is a better news story for Democrats than Georgia and North Carolina, which right now are borderline disaster, maybe too strong a word, problematic. Let's go with that. Georgia and North Carolina are problematic for Democrats. Pennsylvania is not. With the exception of Philadelphia, there's not been a meaningful decline in the share of the early vote coming out of these Democratic vote-rich counties. And so far, it appears that a lot of the Republican early vote is not new voters. It's simply shifting votes from election day to early. Now, that's good because they're banked and Republicans can focus their efforts elsewhere, but they'd rather see new people coming in. So, Sean, what do you think of my critique from my sources of how to appraise the early vote so far?
I think it's very spot on. I would note that I used the Democratic talking points for 2 cycles when I tried to excuse why our side wasn't doing as well. So I've seen those, but it's been our side that usually gave them out. So I felt really good when I saw what they're saying, because I was like, these are the excuse we made up for 2 cycles.
Okay, Dan.
Well, I think the difference is that last time in 2020, Democrats placed a massive importance on early vote because of COVID. And conversely, Trump was outright saying, I don't trust this, don't do this. So this time you have Trump kind of at times saying that, and then at other times saying, no, vote early. And Democrats are focused on early vote, but not, there isn't COVID. So I think, Mark, to your point, the big question then becomes like, who are these early voters? We all know the Trump campaign needs low propensity voters to turn out to break that kind of 48% ceiling. Democrats believe right now Republicans are not seeing that. They are kind of, as you say, cannibalizing or robbing Peter to pay Paul with their early vote. And for all those who are wondering, like, why do I say that? What the campaigns can do is take the information publicly available from the Secretary of State and then layer on their information from making phone calls, knocking on doors, and all the analytics that they're privy to try to identify more specifically, because the Secretary of State doesn't say Dan Turrentine, white male voted early. It puts out stuff in, a little bit more of a bland sense.
But I think the point on that last slide that you made, Mark, look, for Republicans, if the strategy is to really go after low propensity and newly registered voters, to get even 4 out of 4 voters to bank their vote early, gives the campaign the resources and the time and the distance to go, great. We know Spicer banked his vote. Now we can go after, Smith and Jones. So I used to be very skeptical. I played the game, and that's why I'm saying for our side, I use the talking point all the time. They're cannibalizing their election day voters by just getting them to bank it. But this year, the strategy has been so concentrated on those low propensity voters. And we've sold the message that if you are a 3 or 4 or 4 or 4 or a good voter, get it out of the way so we don't have to worry about you. We don't have to worry that something's going to come on election day. You're good. And it's clear that it's, at least initially, that message is resonating.
So as I said, Republicans or Democrats are underperforming right now with non-white voters in Georgia and North Carolina based on the data. Yesterday, the vice president was in Atlanta at 2 church events, and she and her surrogates, including the Obamas, will continue to press this. Souls to the polls has become something of a cliche, but it works, and it's a huge Democratic edge. And yesterday, the vice president in Georgia attempting to stoke this, but they'll continue to, and that's why you shouldn't evaluate the numbers just off of first day. Let's look at Vice President Harris in Georgia yesterday. working to turn out vote, and then we'll go back to Dan. 107, please.
Our country is at a crossroads, and where we go from here is up to us, as Americans and as people of faith. And now we ask a question, we face this question: what kind of country do we want to live in? A country of chaos, fear, and hate, or a country of freedom, compassion, and justice? And the great thing about living in a democracy is that we, the people, have the power to answer that question. So let us answer, not just through our words, but through our actions.
All right, Dan. What were you going to say, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is the good news for Democrats, and the reason Democrats have some optimism here as we come down the stretch, is that both campaigns are targeting, people of color, young voters, and kind of soft, what we'll call Haley Republicans. And Democrats feel like we know these voters. We fret over whether or not, blacks will turn out, Latinos will turn out, young voters will turn out kind of every few years. We know how to reach them. We know how to turn them out. Conversely, Republicans, maybe there's an example from many years ago, have never had to say like, okay, we're relying on turning out young black men. We know how to do this. We know how to get them to the polls. And so Democrats feel like, given the universe of undecideds, either between the two candidates or whether to vote at all, these are our voters and we know them well.
I think that's a good point. Except the difference is we don't, as I've noted before, we don't need to crush it. We just need to do better. As I like to say, we need to suck less. So I think that's you're right. And if we get to a point in a couple cycles from now, obviously that'll change. But for right now, we just need to eat into the Democratic base.
But you got to get them out. And, Democrats have fretted for years that the voters we're talking about are the least reliable voters to turn out. Yep. And so the question is, can you get to them, and can you, get them there? And our side feels pretty good that we know how to do this.
On the current trajectory, Republicans would enter Election Day feeling very good about Democrat underperformance. But with the current trajectory can change, and the Democrats have all the awareness in the world of the data. They've got lots of levers to pull, and they have at the top of the campaign, Jen O'Malley Dillon, a field person who is running the campaign and who gets the fact that they have to improve from where they are. It's not a disaster for Democrats overall, but as I said, the underperformance of non-white voters, particularly, and the overall underperformance in Georgia and North Carolina is worrying Democrats currently. All right. The biggest debate over the weekend, I think, and sort of the one side sees it one way, the other side sees it the other, is Donald Trump closing this campaign strong, or is he a disaster, right? The Lincoln Project view is he's lost his mind. He's rambling. He's grasping. He's going to close McDonald's and avoiding questions about the minimum wage. Republicans are seeing event after event that demonstrates strength and momentum. So Andrew Sullivan, not a Republican, but someone who's been pretty bearish on Kamala Harris, says the Al Smith dinner, the Arnold Palmer yarn, the McDonald's shtick, he's on a roll. If you think these things hurt him, you really need to get out more. He's as foul as ever, but he's charming the country one more time and out-campaigning Harris by a mile. I'm beginning to wonder if this election will be close at all. So, guys, before you respond to this question of if Trump is doing great or crappy, let's look at some highlights from his recent events, including the McDonald's. For those of you who missed it, you should watch the whole thing. But take a look at 104, please.
Just go like that.
We will give them salt pancakes.
What's your sucker? They look like they were. How are you? Nice to see you. That's great. Thank you, man. Appreciate all Thank you very much. Fantastic. Hello. This is my new baby boy. How are you? Your new baby. How are you? Doing great. How are you? So this is compliments of me, okay?
Taxes continue to go up, and sometimes you feel like you're in a losing battle.
I know.
Because it's just tax after tax.
I know this place even better than you.
I'm sure you do.
I know this place with the taxes and tax certiorari.
That's the Steelers game last night. Dan, I know you're fair-minded about this, unlike people with Trump derangement syndrome. Is he closing strong, or is he a mess?
He's closing strong. I mean, he is out and about. I mean, we're talking about trying to turn out young black men. He's in a black barbershop. He's going to an NFL football game. Working in McDonald's. I will say, if, a Democrat was in a starched white shirt and had shut it down, we would never hear the end of it. But no, he's doing well. I will say, though, the Arnold Palmer joke probably doesn't help him with Republican, women that he's trying to hold in his column. But, overall, this is good stuff. And he has a history of closing well.
Sean.
I'll associate my my comments with the gentleman from New York. I think he's the McDonald's thing is great. I love everyone whining about, oh, well, the orders were predetermined. It's like, it's all about imagery. This is what campaigns do on both sides. I thought it was fantastic. Him showing
the photo op didn't have enough verisimilitude.
Well, look, I think he is. I mean, if he can keep staying right in this lane, it's going to be a great.
Okay,
night.
but Sean, let me devil's advocate this. Okay, so we heard for months that Republicans wanted to talk about the economy and inflation. I didn't ever hear them say they wanted to talk about the economy, inflation, and Arnold Palmer's junk. So why is this not a crisis that he's getting coverage for things that aren't about the economy and inflation?
You get 4 out of 5. That's not bad. It's still an 80. Look, I mean, as Dan said, like, if you think that Trump is suddenly going to be like, coming out of St. Michael's or St. Patrick's on Sunday morning and, after confession, you're nuts. It's Trump. But I mean, this is who he is. And I think he's the Pittsburgh Steelers game, the rally. I mean, he's on fire. He is who he is. I don't think anyone's going, I didn't think he was a little offensive or crude. That's Donald Trump. But he also sat there at the McDonald's and it played really well. I think he got really well received at the Steelers game. I wish New Hampshire was at play and he could be at a Patriots game, but that's not going to happen this season. So, but I mean, again, if you're asking me, anything coming out of this weekend I worry about? No.
Well, I also just think at this point, he doesn't need to talk about the economy to some extent. Like, I think just like the Harris campaign is like, we're kind of done with that. Now we're going to try to scare the hell out of you about him. And he's trying to show you, like, I'm one of you. I get you. I eat fast food. I watch football on Sunday night. And, I'll be happy to hang out in a barbershop and, talk about how much the economy sucks and is hurting you. And it's two different tracks.
All right. Last topic. Then we're going to your questions. Lots of hands up, which we love to see. If you'd like to get in the conversation here on the two-way platform, please raise your electronic hand. So Harris today with Liz Cheney, we've seen that the scale of these events, not that big. I'll be curious to see how much coverage they get in the States and nationally. Trump's doing Madison Square Garden on Sunday. He might campaign with Nikki Haley. We'll see Michelle Obama out. Of the remaining events that we know about or that we imagine might occur, what do you guys think is a breakthrough big deals, if anything? Sean.
I think the Haley thing would get a ton of media play just because most of the media is in love with Nikki Haley. She's like the John McCain of the cycle that they want to, that they really like and therefore will play it up, which is good for Trump. I don't know what else. I mean, there's only so many more things, but then again, considering the cycle, I would never suggest that there's nothing. I don't know what else in terms of the who. If you're asking what surrogate could show up, ironically, I think that it is interesting how late it's been for Michelle Obama, and I still will go back. I know that you noted Joe Biden has been out there, but not in any prominent way, and I think that's interesting to me.
Yeah, but
it's
I
hard
don't
to
think
get coverage.
Biden turned the constituency out. I mean, I think Michelle Obama can help you with young Black women. She can help you with, even kind of young voters in general who look somewhat positively still at the Obamas. I don't think, Mark, there's anything really on the schedule that we see today that will move it. The one thing as a Democrat, given the focus on young voters that the party has, is if something out of the Middle East happens that would potentially tear the party apart again, and all this work kind of falls apart.
Yeah, even there, I think the bar is pretty high because we've seen a lot of activity and it doesn't seem to be affecting much domestically as best we can tell. Margaret, welcome in. Everybody, I'm going to ask you for the next 2 weeks. If you're for Harris, be prepared to lose. If you're for Trump, be prepared to lose. Everybody needs to be prepared to lose because there's only going to be one winner. And that's going to be super important for the country. Think about winning, but also think about losing. Margaret, welcome in. Tell everybody who doesn't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
Good morning, guys. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas, and I am with Trump. I had a couple things I wrote down. I have my pencil here. I was making notes. One thing that I wanted to say to Sean, I watched his show a couple days ago, and he was asking about female podcasts that Trump should go on. And Sage Steele, I know she's been doing some town halls with him, but I think she would be a great place for him to go. And I have a question. I might come across really dumb, but when people early vote, do the votes get counted early, or is it just a number of registered Republicans that have voted or registered Democrats that have voted? Like, or do they wait till voting day to count them? I just have no idea. So
Yeah. You mean when they actually open them up and count them?
yes.
Some states let you start when they come in. Most states require of the battleground states, they require you wait till the morning of. So 7 a.m. when polls open, they start counting. And in most states, it's a separate operation. The people who are doing same day voting, in-person voting, are focused on that, and then other employees are dealing with the absentees. It'd be great if they could start earlier because it's still a big burden on the election offices. But
what do you think the reason is that they don't allow them to do that?
Our laws aren't very good. It's very decentralized. The states get to decide, and they don't want I believe the reason is they don't really want the risk of like vote totals trickling out. It's just better to not have anybody possibly saying, hey, this candidate's ahead or this candidate's behind.
I've got one more question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So Kamala, this past couple days with the alienation of Christians at her rally, when there were some people there that shouted Christ is King, and she said, oh, you're at the wrong rally. That just, I don't know how well that's going to play. And then she goes to church yesterday morning. So I wanted y'all's thoughts on that. And also, I thought McDonald's was a hit. I am ashamed to say it because I lift weights 6 days a week and I try to eat pretty good, but me and my daughter were convinced to go to McDonald's last night.
Margaret, aren't you supposed to take a day off between lifting?
I do. I do
or you do legs one day. Yeah. Okay. But one day. All right. I'll address a couple of what you said and then turn it over to Sean and then Dan to comment.
Right.
I think that it's easy to take a politician shouting at a heckler and assume that they heard what was said and that what they shouted was a linear response to the last thing the heckler said. We've actually seen this twice with Kamala Harris in the last week. Once with a pro-Palestinian protester, once with some pro-life protesters. I just don't think it's fair, and that's irrespective of party. We don't know she heard what was shouted.
Sure.
The audio is very difficult back and forth up on the stage, so I wouldn't make much of that, although I know people will. Something like 87% of Americans go to McDonald's at least once a year, and I like to say 7% more are liars. Sean.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that's going unaddressed by both candidates is the number of ice cream machines broken at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Ever driven up to a McDonald's to get the cone, the simple cone, 200 calories, should be about $1. More than not, and I would love one candidate to just address what's being done to fix this national travesty. I will say this. I agree with you, Margaret. First of all, thank you for the shout out. It was kind of a cool discussion because actually part of it, what prompted this was Mark the other day when we were talking about Patrick Bet-David. I have this conversation with a lot of folks, even among Republicans in Washington, where they'll say something about reaching out to the right. And I'll mention like Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Patrick Bet-David, and they'll look at me and be like, who are those folks? And I'm going, if you don't know who they are, then you're missing the conversation on the right. And this is my own party, never mind the left. And I think the media doesn't know who they are. And I will argue the same thing's true on some of the folks on the left, but I'll let Dan handle that. But there are more conversations happening in independent media. So part of the reason I asked the question the other day was I said, we were talking about reaching out to women and which podcasts do people think would be great for doing that? And then the last thing I'll say is I'm glad, thank you for flagging that comment that she made. It was highly, highly disrespectful to Christians. And I think the media did a disservice. And if you'll take Mark's analysis at face value, if she didn't hear what they said, then she wants to give a response, then that's on her. She told them to leave and go down the rally. If she didn't hear them, she could easily say, I'm sorry I didn't hear you, or I'm speaking. She assumed what they were there for was a pro-life cause and kicked them out and told them to go down the road. If she didn't hear them, then she can't get credit for the response. And the other day, we all said that she was nifty and kind because whatever. The media selectively edited out what that comment was. And when JD Vance heard the comment the other day, he said, "You're absolutely right. Christ is king." So I don't buy it. And I think that it was absolutely dishonest what happened the other day in terms of how the media played it. They made it seem like these pro-lifers were there to disrupt her rally. If she didn't hear it, then that's okay, but she doesn't get credit for the response then.
I agree.
Well, she might have known the topic they were there for, but not the exact line. I'm just wary of saying it's a one-to-one exact line.
I'm
You
sorry.
can't have you actually can. Dan.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I totally agree about podcasters. I think it is the future, and more candidates are going to, do this versus the New York Times. Look, I mean, when Trump says, when there's a protester, screams out, and Trump says, "Beat the hell out of him and get him out of here," right? Like,
Sure.
candidates get interrupted. They ask them to leave. They kind of try to, turn it from an uncomfortable moment into kind of humor or whatever. Do I think she's anti-religious? I do not think Kamala Harris is. Do I think Trump is a bastion of religious values? I do not. I just think, it doesn't look good, to Sean's point, but I think Harris was just trying to make light of it, kind of crack a joke, and get the crowd roaring in her support versus the news being she's being interrupted by protesters.
Yeah. Margaret, what do you like most about Kamala Harris and least about Donald Trump?
Okay, what do I like most about Kamala Harris? Her hair always looks really good. Really good. What I like least about Trump is sometimes I wish he could tighten up his weave that he talks about when he gets asked a question and he starts and he kind of does this number and then he eventually comes back. I always wait because I know I'm going to get the answer, but I wish he would shorten it up just a little bit. And I wanted to add one more thing. The comment about Arnold Palmer, I was not offended if you listen to the whole clip. He apologized for it was in a critical part to the story, he said, but I just don't make anything of it the same way that I didn't make anything about Obama making references to his manhood as well. So I think it's kind of like we cherry pick on both sides. Oh, this. And, it's a game that they're all playing. They do these little things. And so I just wasn't bothered by it.
Margaret, how many people have you introduced to the morning meeting and two-way this week so far?
4. I sent it to my dad and he watched and he said I did a great job. So I told him I'd be back today. So I'll send him this one. I sent it to my husband. He works on an oil rig. So the fracking thing is very big for our household. And he sent it to a couple of his buddies. And they watched it.
Grateful to you, but not enough. So please get us more.
What number would you like? What number would you like, Mark?
We like everybody to do 47 in honor of the 47th president. So
when we have coffee,
you know what?
Get one.
Maybe by the end of it, maybe by election day, I'll have 47.
Margaret, thank you. Thanks for joining. We appreciate it. Warn our affiliates, we are going to run at least somewhat over today. We bring in Ann. Ann, thanks for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
Illinois, I voted for Harris, and very proud to have done that. I just like to say that I think more Democrats are going to be voting early because I've been calling, for Kamala Harris, and it seems like they're going to be going next couple of days, and I have very positive responses as opposed to last time because of lockdowns and everything. A lot of people voted by mail, and so anyway, I think I'm happy. I feel pretty positive, more positive than I did last couple of weeks, that I think she has a good chance to win.
Yeah, tell us what you're worried about now.
Well, again, like I said, if it concerns me when people. It surprises me, being lucky enough to be able to vote, when you do call some people say they're not voting, and I just don't get that. That concerns me, and I don't know. What concerns me a little bit is I understand what Sean says about, you know, purging voters, but it scares me. I think sometimes people are unfairly purged. And what if, you know, and then they're sent brochures by, you get literature on both sides. What if they send you something, say, well, we're going to purge you. You need to fix this.
Right.
And that gets lost. That concerns me.
Yeah. What do you like least about the vice president and most about Donald Trump?
To be honest with you, I'm very impressed with Kamala Harris. Maybe her view, I mean, the fact that she maybe changed her, I'm glad that she is I'm more of a moderate Democrat. I'm glad that she did moderate her views. Maybe the fact that she didn't fully explain it, but I really am impressed with her. So what was your other question? I'm sorry.
What do you like most about Donald Trump?
Oh, I think I think he can be amusing in a mean way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for all that. Excellent to hear from you. Is there a question you want to ask Sean and Dan?
just Dan. I mean, I like you very much, but it just seems like it's my impression sometimes is I think that um I don't think you appreciate. It doesn't seem like you give enough credit to Kamala Harris. I think you kind of criticize her more than is necessary. But
Okay. Good.
you know,
The fair
Good
question.
feedback. Too many
Dan.
people came on here with positive things, and
Yeah.
I need more people to give me that.
Yeah.
Look, you're not the only one who has shared that type of feedback, including in my own household at times. Look, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that in 2 weeks from tomorrow, I will have been a little bit wrong on this. But you know, I try to be honest. I try to, you know, when I think she's coming up short, say it. But look, she's right there. It is a super close race. As I said at the top of the show, there's reason for optimism with who these undecideds are. I think you made a great point. It's not just people looking at whether to vote for Harris or Trump, but people who are thinking, do I vote or vote for Harris or vote for Trump, right? Like it's those people who are a little soft, but you know, hopefully there's good news these last 2 weeks that I can, you know, be on a front foot about why I think Harris is going to win.
Yeah.
I know that Ann didn't ask for me for my opinion, but I'll just pipe in Dan and then myself, which is, I think what we say is out of love, right? Dan wants Harris to win. I mean, I hope he switches over at some point, but my point is that he doesn't say critical things to be mean. He says them because he wants Harris to improve. And likewise, I think the comments that I make about Trump aren't because I don't want him to win. It's because I want him to be better or correct and you know and get more votes. So when we correct, I think part of it is that we want people to know what we think can be done better, not like we don't like them. So I think everything we say comes out of a place of concern for the person that we want to win.
And part of why this platform was created in its political vertical was to have people be honest about what they see, rather than what a lot of political coverage is, which is, besides being only one way, being focused on people speaking only positively about their tribe rather than honestly. And as Sean said, honestly, to maybe try to help correct some stuff out. So I would urge you to show forbearance and grace to Dan and Sean, regardless of who you're supporting, and for Dan to say he's not here to be gratuitously critical. He's just saying what he sees, and that's, we think, part of why this platform is different and we hope valuable. And thank you for joining. Very grateful to you. Thank you. All right, we have a celebrity guest today, Mr. Michael Briggs. Mr. Briggs, we're honored to have you. Unmute. Not everybody knows you, so tell folks where you are, your role in politics, and we'd love to hear what you've got in mind.
I'm in Washington, D.C., live on Capitol Hill, so therefore my vote doesn't matter a whole lot. And I have not decided how to vote this time. One of those undecided still that Dan was talking about.
All right. Who are you deciding between?
Harris and not voting.
Okay. And tell people just about your history in politics, just so they know.
My history in politics started when I was 5 years old, and my dad lifted me up in the polling place to vote for Adlai Stevenson in 1956, the president. and I voted for Democrats all the times since I became eligible to vote in '72 and Georgia McGovern since then, except for 2016 when I rejected my boss's advice and voted for Bernie Sanders as a write-in candidate in DC.
So what politicians besides Bernie Sanders have you worked for?
Worked for several senators that people wouldn't have heard of.
All right, but Bernie Sanders, you did work for him. And just before I give the floor back to you to say what you want or ask what you want, why aren't you an automatic vote for the Democrat?
I am concerned that it's too much of a blank slate and don't want to reward the people in the manipulation business that I was in for a while by casting a vote for a blank check.
Okay. Floor is yours, sir. Thank you for joining. We're honored to have you.
I was prompted to chime in by your comment earlier about how people on both sides ought to be prepared to lose come 2 weeks from now. I happened to see you on another platform I watched over the weekend where you were talking about what I think you said in all likelihood, if it was a close election, that there would be problems in the country, bordering on riots from either side. And I was thinking that now, 2 weeks away from the election day, it's an opportune time to start thinking about what can be done to prevent that. And I know that the best thing that can be done to prevent that is for the two people at the top of both tickets to be talking in common sense ways about how we get through to a peaceful transfer of power in the country. But I'm interested in more on what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I'll name my three things and then turn it over to Sean and Dan. Number one is what you said, which is the candidates and their senior staff need to really be focused on grace and understanding and country first. Two is the governors. The governors must have a bipartisan plan to reach out to former governors of the other party, to figure out where their National Guard is, to figure out how to balance free speech rights with law and order and civic justice, and not rely on the federal government. Every governor has a scalable challenge, particularly in the battleground states, none of which are California size. And then lastly, it's up to all of us. It's up to every citizen to not inflame things on Twitter, to not inflame things in their workplace. I think we can isolate the people who want to engage in violence to a really small group. If all of us say whatever else happens, we're just not going to be setting an example for the rest of the world and for our kids that we can't have an election in this country without violence. And I think that the strength is in the 98% of the country that has no interest in that whatsoever. But those voices have to not be silent. They have to speak out. So rather than just not going on X and inflaming it, go on X and tamp it down, regardless of whether your candidate wins or not. Those are my three things. Dan.
Yeah, no, I think you said it well. I think, I look at people like Brian Kemp in Georgia last time who, spoke up in defense of his state, even at his own peril. And I believe that most people will ultimately, when push comes to shove, do the right thing. And I think, look, the other part of this is, as a Democrat, I remember this well in 2000, when you have a race that is super, 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 super close, let's hope it doesn't come down to a few hundred like Florida, any sort of irregularity out of 7 million vote cast then gets painted as the whole entire system is corrupt, right? As opposed to just, okay, 0.0001% had, an issue. So I just hope that good people do the right thing.
Yeah, hopefully, I think some of the changes that have been made since 2020 to allow greater integrity and transparency in the process will help. So let's hope that we don't need to get there.
Mr. Briggs, I'd love for you to come back. Tell us who you're going to vote for if you decide to vote.
Thanks. I'll keep working on that. Keep watching this every day to get more input on that.
All right. Honored to have you. Thank you. Bring Senator Sanders. We'd like to have him. Pam, come on in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please, after you unmute.
All right. I am unmuted, and thank you so much for calling on me, and good morning to everybody. I really love the morning meeting and the afternoon, by the way. I am a Trump supporter. I'm in Albany, New York. I actually started out with the same question that Margaret had, but I still had like an alternate question. I really did think that that was a bad thing for her to respond in that way. And I think it was clear, at least to me, that when she did respond in the way that she said, "You're at the wrong rally." And then, of course, she made a comment about, "Oh, you should be at that small rally down the hall or down the street, whatever." That's why I thought she really did hear them. And the whole idea of that, I thought it would be a negative for her because only recently Gretchen Whitmer was involved in something with an influencer where they were doing a faux communion ceremony with a Dorito. It's just ridiculous. What I'm really interested now in, and this is more of a question for the folks, all of you, the lack of Biden involvement in the Harris campaign didn't really surprise me. I didn't think his wife liked her at all. And so she influences him greatly. But it isn't just the lack of his involvement. Suddenly I'm hearing people talking on some of the news programs about down ballot state senator candidates who are including Trump in their campaign ads. I just wonder what you make of it. It seems like they're turning on her, but I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, Pam Dan, what do you think? We talked a little bit about this last week, but what do you think of Bob Casey and others seeming to embrace Trump a little bit in their ads at the end here?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, if you think that your candidate at the top of the ticket has 50.1% of the vote and is going to win, you hug him or her because you don't want distance between those voters and you. If you think that that your top of the ticket's opponent is likely going to win for your own survival, you need to peel off some of those voters. And so you want to be seen as cooperative, as maybe supportive of some of the more popular items that person is advocating for. So fracking for Bob Casey in Pennsylvania. And so, look, obviously, I would love it if every Senate and House Democrat says, "I'm with Kamala Harris," and is singing from the same hymnal. They're not. And that tells you kind of how, precarious some of the leads are in some of those states.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, the thing that I found interesting is that it wasn't just one, it's three, right? So you got three folks invoking Donald Trump in their ad on the Democratic side. And to Dan's point, it's a very easy math solution. If it's not even 50.1, but if it's probably in the high 40s and they feel good about where their candidate is, they're not going to hug the Republican, especially Donald Trump, unless they feel it's beneficial to them. So I would argue that that's actually bodes very, very well for us as we head into the end, because you took the time to build an ad. So it wasn't like you made a throwaway line in a speech or sent out a tweet. You put an ad on broadcast television embracing Donald Trump, which makes me think that they see a lot of data that doesn't look good for Harris in their state. And so I appreciate that. And then the last thing I'll just say is I agree with you, not just on the Harris comment at the rally, which I've said, but also on the Whitmer video, which was appalling and got really little attention, because I think that the media, this gets back to my soapbox on how the media covers stuff. If a Republican had done that, everyone would have been asked about it. They gave Whitmer a pass.
Can I just say,
Pam, thank you.
Just one thing on that point, Sean. As more candidates go on these unique podcasts that have kind of like catchy thing, this is going to be an issue for every Democrat or Republican. That when you're on these podcasts and you're speaking to specific audiences, you remember the broader electorate. Do I think she intentionally, Gretchen Whitmer did that to kind of like stick the finger to Catholics? No, I don't. Do I think she was mortified when she kind of like stepped back? Absolutely. But everyone's going to face this on these type of podcasts that are so niche and bizarre and have stunts to get audiences.
And I don't disagree with you. I mean, well, I don't know the facts enough to know whether she agreed or didn't. But I think the point, my outrage, Dan, is that when Trump does something like we heard, the comments he made over the weekend, and everybody's outraged, and yet here she is doing something that is unbelievably disrespectful and inflammatory to Catholics. And there was no comment from the media on this. No one had to apologize from it. There was no Democrat. And
She did apologize.
Okay.
Detroit media asked her about it.
Yeah, well, again, pass.
I understand.
You're saying there's a double standard, huh?
Yeah. Pam, thank you. Tom, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good deal. Well, thank you so much for the platform. I watch you guys every morning, so thank you. I'm in Nevada. I will be voting for Trump. So my question, so I'm a political junkie, political nerd, I guess you could say. Actually wrote a book even. So I don't think people realize quite how the political parties have shifted really drastically in terms of the vote, just the who votes for Democrats, who votes for Republicans. I would say probably as high as a third, if not close to 40%, just since 2012. And that was, like I said, I mean, I'm a little nervous. It's my first time on there, so I'm sorry if I'm talking.
You're doing great. You're doing great. Take a deep breath if you want, but you're doing great.
So the first time I ever voted was actually in 2020. I'm not a conservative. I'm not. I'd actually say I'm a little more of an old school liberal, like an RFK in a lot of senses.
Did you vote for Biden or Trump in 2020?
I voted for Trump. And I'm not the biggest Trump fan in the world. I mean, I think his message is appealing. I like his more populist message. I wish he would tone things down at times. I mean, he leaves a large chunk of voters on the table just because, people just won't vote for him because of his personality. But the Democratic Party has gone so far to the left. Dan, if you guys ever will go back to the 90s, the Clinton years, I mean, I'd be happy to reconsider. But, we recently moved to Nevada from California and, things, parental rights, things have not, the sanctuary cities, I mean, they're just not helping the average folks. And, I'm voting for Trump, but it's more a vote just, sorry, Dan, again, just a vote against your party. Like I said, I mean, I actually wrote a book on this. I would consider myself pretty well informed, but I mean, obviously there's a lot more to learn. I don't want to be stubborn about it. So I'm also open to both sides. And again, I appreciate it. So again, my question just would be in your opinion, say since 2008 is probably a bad example because Obama won by such a good margin, but say 2012 to 2016 to now, what percentage of former Democrats do you think switched Republican, and then percentage of former Republicans switched Democrats? I mean, I would say 35 to 40%. I think it's pretty significant, and it's something that people don't really talk about too much. So
yeah. I mean,
okay, Tom, thank you. Go ahead. That's
yeah. I mean, I think there is a realignment going on with the two parties. Democrats are doing better with white collar voters in the suburbs, the kind of Clinton Bush Republicans that are more socially liberal and kind of fiscally conservative. And Democrats are getting trounced with working class voters in Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. It's Trump's strength. And in addition, what I think we've seen in 2020 and we're seeing now is working class, non-college educated people of color are following the same, migration of working class, non-college educated white voters from the 60s and 70s. And as a Democrat, this is a problem. In the long run, we have got to figure out a way to try to bring these voters, give them reason to vote for us, not just vote against, Trump, who, if he wins, will not be on the ballot in 2028. So what is our plan to do that? But I agree, there is a realignment. I don't know what percentage of the macro vote it is, but it's material.
Yeah, I don't know what the numbers are. Mark, Seth Keshel will be on my show today. He's really great on data. I know you had him on two-way not too long ago, but I mean, we're going to talk about voter reg. But the other thing to keep in mind is it's not just one side voting for another, but we're seeing in a lot of states, North Carolina, I think, is one of them, where the people are leaving the parties and going to register as independents. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to vote a particular way, but they don't want to be associated with one of the two parties. And so that's where I think some of the realignment's occurring too, which is I don't want to be a Republican or a Democrat, but I might vote for a lot of your candidates, but I'm going to be an independent on the voter rolls.
Okay. Tom, how'd you learn about the morning meeting in two-way?
So I just follow a lot of political commentary, and I think I just originally just saw it was like a recommendation on YouTube. I've also seen you gentlemen on Megyn Kelly. I'll watch her clips occasionally. I think I saw Mark actually on a clip on Bill O'Reilly maybe about a month ago. So just, I mean, you guys are definitely out there, and, again, you guys are, I'll just say big wigs for lack of a better term. And, you guys let just common people get in and discuss. So I think it's a really cool platform. I appreciate it. And, I'm not on here every morning, but I watch every morning. And, actually, I'm on TV right there. So, yeah.
All right, man. Thank you for joining. We're grateful to you. Grateful to you. Thank you. Appreciate it. John Watson, come on in. Tell folks where you are, who you're supporting, what's on your mind, please.
Hey, good morning, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. First time raising my hand, been loving the platform, Mark, for quite a while now. So I really appreciate you guys doing this.
We're grateful. We're grateful to you for joining in.
So I'm from the swing state of Maryland. Trump supporter, voted for him both at 16 and 20. Just one thought, and then I had a question about the polling. I looked back at the weekend and this, debate whether or not is Trump got momentum or is he falling apart? And obviously, as a Trump supporter, my viewpoint is the one way. But the credibility I think that the Harris campaign has on, he skips 60 minutes. He's a mess. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. To me, it just feels a little bit like a Hail Mary at the end of the half where, Rodgers goes down and he's praying to God that somebody's going to catch the touchdown in the end zone. Like, when she doesn't go to the dinner, the Al Smith dinner, and she has this narrative of dodging and being very, squishy, not squishy with her answers a lot. I just don't think the average independent-minded person really would be buying that too much. And I think him going to McDonald's and doing some of these other public events really shows a little bit of a different type of Trump, like a more like common man kind of a feeling. And I agree with Dan that I don't think the economy at this point for a voter, I think that's all kind of baked in. I think they know where Trump stands on the policy issues, and I do like this like kind of subtle little difference in what he's doing on the campaign trail. And I just don't think that it's going to stick with the Harris campaign is really doing ultimately at the end.
John,
so that's
thank
my
you for all that.
comment. And my question,
if we get your question, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. And then my question about the polling is, I think for a long time they've been talking about 16 and 20 votes for Trump, maybe, we're underestimating his national appeal or maybe in the battleground states. So now you have 4 out of the last 6 on Real Clear Politics shows Trump with a small, but a point or two lead. And I don't think anybody would say that they are overcounting Trump voters on a polling scale. I don't think I've heard that much. So I'm just curious about, that small little trend line we're seeing nationally. It's feeling like it's a kind of like going like to the Biden thing a little bit. And I was just curious a little bit more about what you guys thought about that, if there's anything there. And then Dan, sorry about the Mets, but maybe next year.
John, thank you. Dan and then Sean.
Sure. I mean, look, I think everyone's trying to pick apart, Trump goes to McDonald's, like, to sign of desperation. Harris, does something and it's a sign of desperation from her part. Both campaigns are locked in on exactly who they're trying to target and turn out at this late stage. I will also say, as a Democrat, some good news here. I'm not talking about national, but battleground polls. This time last week, we said Trump had momentum in the blue wall states, that he had gone from down 2 or 3 to tied or up 1 or 2. And the question was, would that become 3, 4, and 5 points, kind of get out of the margin of error? It hasn't happened, right? He has kind of stalled on some level. And so we are in a razor close election. I do think national polls will be a little different because I think Trump will do way better in New York, California, and blue states than he did last time. And I don't think Harris is going to do better in any red states than Biden did. So I'm actually not so certain that she needs a 4-point lead in the national polls, but it's super close, and they are going to do what they do to pick apart the other as desperate, weak, and crazy.
I say, John, to your first point, I've said this before, but in politics, a lot of times there's narratives that get associated with someone. They're a prolific fundraiser, they're on the go, whatever. Trump doesn't have a problem with the perception that he's not doing interviews and stuff. So when Harris starts saying, "Oh, he skipped this interview," whatever, I don't think anyone cares because they're not like, "God, I haven't seen Trump today." That's not an issue for him, right? And so it's a hard sell, and I'm surprised that they're going down there because I don't think people think that Trump lacks the energy. In fact, like I've said in a million cases, most people would say, I wish he would tamp down a lot. I mean, he goes to rallies, he talks, you can say meandering or whatever, but the energy thing just doesn't stick as a narrative. The second thing I would just note on the polling is when you go back to 2016, at this point in the campaign, Clinton had an 8-point national lead, Trump won. Biden had an 11-point national lead, right? And so this thing, if it's close, and Dan might be right, I think that Trump is doing better in some blue states because he's visited them, because more working class folks are coming out, and because it's a non-COVID year. But I do think this is like, we're going to go down to the wire on this thing in a lot of these states.
John, thank you. Very grateful to you. Thank you. All right. This is not a pro-Trump show. I called on two people who we didn't know what they were going to say. They both said they were for Trump. That's the way it goes. But we still would love Harris supporters to raise your hands in greater numbers. And we'll keep asking for that. But tonight, 6 o'clock, I'll be back with another episode of Two-Way Tonight. Then this Thursday, our doubleheader. Okay. 11 to 1. You can register now. You can go to my Substack and see how to register to join this. Karl Rove will run through all 7 battleground states. He'll take your questions, demography, history, geography, the whole thing. So sign up now to be part of that on Thursday, 11. And yes, it will be on YouTube. And then regular time, but a 2-hour episode Thursday night, 6 to 8. It's all about Pennsylvania. Special program, polling, undecided voters, politicians, strategists. We're going to talk for 2 hours about what's going on in Pennsylvania, where the battleground state stands, with the assumption that the winner of Pennsylvania certainly has the leg up in becoming president. If you'd like to be part of it, if you're an undecided voter and you live in Pennsylvania, you can be. Send us an email to it'sallaboutpa@gmail.com and just tell us what town or city you live in, and we'll be in touch if you'd like to be part of our conversation with undecided voters as part of Thursday. Gentlemen, I'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you for playing. And thanks everybody who asked questions today. We'll see you again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time right here for what Dan likes to call the meeting of the morning.